All right, hello. How's everybody doing? Obviously exhausted. That's cool, especially after a 3-day.
I woke up for the meeting that we don't have this week, and then I woke up again for the lab we don't have this week.
Sounds like complaining. So hello. Today we are continuing going into phylogeny and sort of some alternate life in a second. Some tools we can use in evolution. I was here pretty early today because I wanted to make sure I had the streaming set up on this computer, which like is notorious for like update problems. So just so you guys are aware, your presence in class for discussions and things like that is absolutely expected and part of like your participation grade. But all these lectures and parts of our lab are going to be recorded and then put onto YouTube so that like you can look at them if you want to for any reason. So one of the things I think that comes with a class that doesn't have like a textbook is if I say one thing one time, it's unlikely I'm gonna like, make that a 50-point question on the exam or something like that. But it's nice for you guys to know you have the ability to go back and look. So on the Moodle page, you haven't seen it yet, there's a YouTube link. And as we go through the course, lectures will be put up on YouTube for you to look at kind of like in review. I would encourage you to not rely on them via your participation. But anyway, today we're gonna pick up where we left off with phylogeny and evolutionary trees. People know this fish? Yeah, coelacanth. So one of these fishes that we call a lobe-finned fish, a fish that's got a lot of muscles and bones right here in the base of its fin that if you don't know what a coelacanth is, obviously that's completely fine. We're gonna talk about it later. But after the king cobra thing, I kind of liked that coelacanths were like a topic a little bit last time. And so I think maybe that's how I'll choose our little cover slides, because who cares what's on the cover slide? Just me. And maybe you guys. So phylogeny. And so where we left off, you guys had learned a little bit of, if you hadn't before, or at least you were refreshed, a little bit of like reading phylogenies. So the cow and the trout and the coelacanth. What do these different lines mean? It's all about the way the lines connect. These are diagrams that show relationships. They show evolution. Evolution is descent with modification. They are tools for us. We are in an applied class. We are not a class that's about phylogenetics. There are classes like that. So we're going to be using trees to answer questions. Trees are another way to test hypotheses that you or any other scientist might have in evolutionary biology. And so something that I want to make really clear to you, and this is something that I think is actually very beautiful, is that phylogenies are these like extremely simple things. That trout, coelacanth, cow from last Thursday, where we just had them like this, 3 lines to show you something really important about the history of like vertebrate life. That is very useful and very functional, but of course the real thing is so much crazier and more interesting. And so these are some really famous diagrams. They're kind of upside down and backwards and all that because how maybe we would talk today, but I really want you guys to see them. So you guys know, I think, from your intro bio courses and maybe something like ecology or something like that, if they talk about it. Evolution, yes, it's descent with modification, but like in the actual moment, what evolution is like changing allele frequencies, right? In populations of breeding organisms, or at least reproducing organisms. That's what evolution actually is. And so what I like about phylogeny and things like I do paleontology is that it's like so far removed, it's like way up there. When you're looking at 5 fossils, there's no population, there's no, capital P, lowercase p, Punnett square in something like macroevolution, which is really big. So this is like a really fun diagram, I think. So past up at the top, future down at the bottom. And so I think in the modern, we would turn this upside down, but this is like this classic figure I really like. What you're supposed to be seeing there is that if you zoom in, if you were to go like this on the little phylogeny that we looked at last week with the cow and the coelacanth and the trout, and zoom in on that line. In real life, leading up to the cow, if you zoomed in far enough, kind of like if you zoomed in on a chromosome, you get to like, the DNA. Those are supposed to represent like populations in time that are kind of weaving back and through each other. So imagining the line on the phylogeny as not like a monolith leading towards cows, but as like the history of life leading up to where that cow is now. So let me show you another zoom in just to help you see what I'm talking about. That's supposed to be like a zoom in on this. And so maybe in the past there was one ancestral thing, and now maybe down here, there's 4 things that we live with in the present, A, B, C, and D. But if we go back and zoom in on any of those lines, we can see that in real life, the way the world really works is like there's all kinds of populations of whatever's happening there before any kind of split happens. And then you can see there's other splits that happen later. There's other splits that happen, but then the descendants of that split aren't alive anymore. They're extinct. They don't exist. That population went away. Maybe that was a new species that went away. And so the real world looks something like that. You and I in a biology classroom are always going to be talking like this. And I know this might seem a little bit like wooey wowie, but I just think it's really important that we're going to be doing this kind of drawing all the time. But as biologists, I want you guys to keep in mind that the real world is something like that. We're only ever kind of approximating. And so phylogenies are simplifications and they're very useful, but they're not supposed to be these standalone things that are absolute. This is a really cool example of phylogeny that I think, you know, if this was a genetics class or if we were doing phylogeny for like our actual point of our class, we probably spend a lot of time on this. I just think it's cool for you guys to see. You can see the black lines here, which represent the actual inferred phylogeny that humans are very confident in of the relationships amongst all of these different Heliconius butterflies. So one genus of butterfly, there's a bunch of species in it. Here's how we think those species are related. The black lines show you the phylogeny. You can see some places it's unresolved, like up there in the green, there's 3 branches coming out of one spot. That's not so great. It means we don't know something. All those rainbow colors are different clades. We're going to talk about what clades are today of these butterflies that everyone's confident are real biological things. But what I love so much about this figure is that it shows you the absolute power we humans have at discerning relationships now. All of those like crazy squiggle lines are the exact same set of butterflies looking at this gene, the exact same set of butterflies looking at this gene, that gene, a different piece of the genetic sequence of all those butterflies. And so you can imagine, right, if it's a gene that codes for like pigmentation, if it's a gene that codes for like how their gut forms, if it's a gene that codes for the proteins in their eye lenses, all of those genes you would expect would usually have the same arrangement with each other in terms of how they descended, comparing the same gene across all the different species. And so because modern biology is so crazy, we can like full genome sequence all of these butterflies, and we can see that like there's like a cloud of probability almost if you get so much data. And I just think it's really cool for you guys to see that in almost all cases, what we might call the real tree, this thing, which we hope is the real thing, matches up with almost all the kinds of evidence we can gather, but it's not perfect. So you guys just do me a quick favor and talk to each other and like make some observations about this butterfly tree where you see things that look like they're not perfect. It doesn't matter that you don't know about this butterfly or about these genes. You just use your color vision. All right, can I get some observations here? Not looking for any one thing. For my group. Yeah,
So the purple doesn't really have any like lines that it's drawn. Purple, I don't know.
whatever this is, the thing. Yeah. Well, so what I think is cool here is you can see that like there's a pretty strong purple like this. So most of the genes in this butterfly, which as a species is all by itself, probably on that side of the bigger split within the genus. But what's cool about this is like, yeah, there are a few different genes that if you sequence those genes, it pops out over here with the orange blue group instead of the green red group. And that's just interesting. If you imagine life as messy, where populations are kind of going back and forth with each other, this butterfly is, we would say, early diverging relative to these other ones. The red and the blue one, red and the green up there diverge later. And so this purple one probably goes up with that. We can be really confident about that, but there's actual little teeny bits of evidence. And it makes sense if you think about how populations really breed and move through each other, where some of the different genes that you might sequence might give you a slightly different result. It doesn't mean that that answer is like wrong. I just think it's important for you guys to see that like when phylogenies are made today with genetic information, people are like running millions of data points and then they're running like probability estimates. When I do phylogenies and when you guys see phylogenies in this class that are based on anatomy, it's all like 4 gills, 6 gills, Yes or no? Like, that's the data we have, and that's what most biologists have for almost everything we've been talking about. I just want to make you like go like this, oh gosh, when you see like how powerful genetics is. And so what's great is like when 4 gills, 6 gills makes a tree between sharks and trout, and I like that tree. What's amazing is that when a geneticist comes through and like carpet bombs like 6 million more pieces of data and they all say the same thing, we can be like, that gill thing worked out great. And so there's other times when the gill thing is going to work out badly, and I'm going to tell you about those. But so anatomy has great explanative power, but when lines of evidence interact with each other, that's when modern biology really is kicking butt. And so this is just another figure that I remember being an undergrad and being like really like calmed by because it was so interesting. So this is the paleontological figure that's supposed to be showing you, here's an ancestral population and here's a bunch of species alive today. And these are all different slices of time. You can imagine like today, 10 million years ago, 15, 20. And it's supposed to be like, look at how these populations are the light gray. And for moments of time, there's a split. Like there's like an island, almost like in a river, and they come back together. And so when you guys were in intro bio and you're learning about speciation, like this is the actual split between this big lineage and this big lineage that maybe these are both 2 species. Within each species, there's populations. But even if you go back far enough, there's moments when like this didn't become 4 species or something like that. This is all just kind of woo-woo-y. I just really like it, and it's my only chance to really give it to you guys. Is right now on the surface of this planet, this is happening. Like I guarantee you, if you were like cut crows or bears into their constituent, like grizzly bears into their constituent parts, it's going to look something like this. There's gene flow between some populations, absolutely not gene flow between others. And we all call them maybe, ravens, but come back in 5 million years, there might be a couple. I just think that's really cool and really important. Whenever we talk about it, all I'm going to give you guys is these dumb straight lines. I just want you to have it in your hearts, what it really is. That was how I wanted to end on Thursday, but we ran out of time. That's why we're kind of starting with like a thing like that. Okay, from now on, for the next 25 minutes, half an hour maybe, you guys are going to be working on, that was terrible, wasn't it? Well, I don't want to do it all the way. I'm going to give you guys a worksheet to do with each other. So you're going to read it. It says right at the top, if you don't know what any of these words are, that's okay. You're not coming to this class like I'm expecting you already know all this stuff. We're going to learn it, but I do suspect that some of you do know some of it. So that's where we're going to start. So go ahead and work in groups of like 3 or 4 if you can. Don't work by yourself and work with at least one other person. All right, let me know if there's any spares needed. Yeah, groups of 3, groups of 4. Great, great, great. Okay, everybody have a sheet? Okay, so on one side of the sheet, there's some like introductory kind of stuff. This is almost like a survey. You might not know what any of this is, and that's okay. I'm giving you this on the back. This is a figure from the herpetology textbook. If you ever take Dr. Peterson's herpetology class, this is a figure from that book. I use this figure because I just love it so much. It's definitely TMI for you guys. You don't need to know all this stuff. It's way too much. But what I like about it is that it's a phylogeny that is mostly, well, it's all vertebrates. It's the lobe-finned fishes, so something like the coelacanth, plus us. What you are seeing here is a phylogeny. And then this is some paleo that I'm sorry, I can't help but sneak it in. So geological time is on the bottom of this chart. So there you are, there I am, we're sitting here in the present, and things like coelacanths and salamanders and turtles are living organisms. And then the phylogeny goes back through time. And what I like about this is that you guys will get to keep this, and it'll be a little way for me to sneak in the fact that you'll have some idea of the geologic age of some of the big groups of vertebrates that we're talking about. All that matters to the worksheet is how the lines connect. All the things that are back here are like extinct things. You can ignore those. I don't care. Focus on the stuff that's alive and use this as just your thing you can scribble on for answering the questions on the other side. And again, please work with each other. I'll be walking around.
Yeah, we're
But I don't know what was cheers or. Yeah.
Does everybody have the one? Or any extras? Are there any extras out there? You know one.
I just went in and was like, yeah. Right, and then I got confused halfway through. It's fine. I think that it's better.
Yeah, so like Skumana. Ryan, played rather. Right.
They got this line. Now, very good.
Very good.
You know, like.
Well, I remember.
This part. I mean. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know. Yeah, so like Vermont is not. That makes it. They get a meeting and nervous stuff.
Yeah, it's long, it's like, yes, the plans.
Yeah.
It's one, like, one really going to have. The next.
So,
Yeah. Everything that includes disciplinary and environmental.
You're asking more. It would just look at like.
I don't think the line really is like, so. You can circle a line, so. You just have to get the whole line. I don't, but sometimes things don't have to be like. And I like.
That's just still making more.
What do you have?
Yeah. Like something that
Literally any. like,
any.
word in there. Yeah. If you really wanted to, you could say sort of straight, that's literally
That's
every line.
This whole. That's the only.
So.
That's me. All the for you, be like. Yeah, like 30, like 3 years. Just. So now we're going to. Yeah, so that means the character, every word is from. If we have it, and we, everyone is in the room. I mean, it's running for top shoes, you know, everything like that. That's not it.
We'll keep that as it's small things.
Like the thing.
You don't have to. Every second.
Yeah, okay. That everything is a group back. Now. Yeah. Explain, I'm trying to explain here. So first thing that is to have to be derived from the
That's what's fun. Answers for all these.
came down here and they split. And one group was about those. So we're not spreading those groups up, and now it's down here. All of the guys here. What happened first? It's the thing moving all the meetings. All the drive. This answer. You can also share it with Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There it is.
That's not where
It's like a little song. It goes away with the.
From their ancestors. So this ancestor here doesn't have perfect orders. These ones he shared these with the ride. Something that makes them different than the other groups specific, that they do not share orders or. Yes, it would like to be here. Yeah.
It needs to be like something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we feeling like we've made some kind of progress? I'm sensing the slowdown back. What if I said it's not?
I mean, I don't know if you want to like figure this out.
No, I definitely don't. I want to plug it together now. Okay, so over here, I've recreated this figure, but I've taken all the paleontology out of it, so it's just what's alive right now. So it's the same thing, same order over there. And then over here, I just picked a few. I thought I'd do them all, but it's too many of just your guys' favorite stuff. So there's a phylogeny. You can make phylogeny of anything, so it's not weird to have jellyfish and flowers on there with all those dogs. But anyway, there's a phylogeny of your guys' favorite stuff. There's a phylogeny that's a simplified version of what's on the worksheet. Can you two groups go up there and you two groups go up there and all 7 of you or whatever it is now? Just do number 1 and number 2, like marking on this tree, those things, and talk to the other group. Talk to the other group. Let's see what we got here. It's definitely okay if it's a disaster. I don't think it will be.
Okay.
Oh, that.
Yeah, so you want to do like.
All right, make sure everybody's included, everybody agrees, just to say. Okay, sorry, go ahead. I don't need any superstars circling everything.
Well, if anybody has an idea of what play we should do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, everything.
Like if you, what plays,
See, they actually do
but like right here.
Yeah, but better.
Anybody care?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Careful, because I do have some, but not all, so like, if it's
Billy, like, that's on, yeah, lineage. Like sister group. Okay, let's do.
I could be wrong, I haven't done it for a while.
That's not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what was it? I'm still.
That's easy.
I like that. Lineage. Well, we feel like. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that.
Alright. I think that's everything. Why not?
That's the perfect sister group on that tree.
Yeah. Nice being a cookie. Nailed it. It's good.
What a great biography question would be, is like, where in the world would I be able to see a monkey and a Pokemon at the same time? No, but I mean, like, where?
Right here.
Continent scale. And zoos don't count. I'm not actually, I'm just like thinking like,
South
or not the silky video.
I still say, I don't know, because he's here, if you're a monkey, if there's a monkey.
Oh, it doesn't say what kind of monkey. Yeah. Monkey's paraphyletic and just people.
That's
Interesting. See, this is why it's like 1 point for the answer and 5 points for explain your reasoning.
Anywhere there, we're defining.
I think, yeah, basically all of Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, for sure.
Favorite snack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, we take the one back to all of it.
Body.
Okay, that's good.
And the map, but. Yeah. We do all one. Yeah, they're literally everywhere.
Wow, we're throwing stuff out. All right, we feel like we got it, number 1 and 2 at least, what important?
Yeah.
Okay, great. do me a favor and swap with each other, look at the other people's tree, make sure like that is copacetic, I get it. Or if you don't, that's okay too.
Where's the alligator? It's sorry.
What are you putting?
I'm not even, I'm just gonna bow like. Yeah, it is.
I'll call back to one of my famous cop outs.
BAUPLAN. That's how you spell bow plan.
We're just evaluating this. We could be.
If you agree with the labels that they put on there.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so. let's see what they're doing.
This one. Actually, crocodile is Google or release a paper on that in your lab.
Oh, good stuff.
Things. We'll see how the reviewers take.
Sure, discussing turtle phylogeny will not be a disputed fact in your labs.
It's getting there. We're almost done. We're almost got to that. All right, feels like you guys kind of got it. I have only been kind of looking, are there things for an understanding or have questions about each other's trees? Full on thumbs up, full on all set.
We're good.
Okay, go ahead and sit down then, that's great. I haven't actually looked that hard, so I'll make sure nothing looks, problematic. Monophyletic group, chloroplasts, wow, we got all kinds of stuff happening here. Awesome, 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 awesome. Okay, so. That is awesome. The hive mind, I think, has like mostly gotten stuff up there in a way that makes sense, but now we will give you some like backing as we go forward into this stuff. So anyway, you already seen this. That's your favorite living organisms. I just wanted to show you this because you guys haven't seen it yet. Here's all the stuff you said was your favorite extinct stuff. So it makes me happy. No point for class. I'm just showing it to you. Congratulations on whoever said the Haven horse here for sure from Idaho. I don't know who should do what. Idaho person for sure. Cool. Good stuff up there. Anyway. All right, so there are going to be some slides. All these slides are of course going to be on Moodle. You guys can go back and check on them. What I like about a lot of these diagrams is they go like out of their way to make everything really, really explicit. The information on them is contained. So like 3 weeks from now, when we're talking about the evolution of vision, and I say something about a polytomy or whatever, you're going to be able to like, I don't remember that one exactly. These slides, I hope, will be able to be helpful to you. There's a whole bunch of terminology that comes with this stuff. We're not going to use all of this. On the slides, all of these terms are defined. So you can always come back and look at this. I'm not going to spend our time here in class reading this out loud to you. But I want to go over the couple that were on the worksheet at least, because I think they're important. So can I just get a volunteer on like what is a taxon? That's number one, first thing. And it's a group, it's not you by yourself. What does your group say is a taxon? We need each other. Yes, Amy. Just any, so what's the taxon on this tree?
We said jellyfish out there.
Jellyfish. Any of these things is a taxon. Any of these things at the top of a phylogeny, a clade that has a name is a taxon. Any label is a taxon. Taxon is just a group of organisms. Taxa is plural. That's that. All right, lineage. Looks like both groups did something similar for lineage where you drew a line going back, which I think is great. There's a lineage there. Can someone tell me a little bit in detail about like, for instance, this group, like what is this lineage versus this one versus this one? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Tell me about this lineage. Not looking for anything specific.
The way that I was thinking about it was it's not a bunch of different lineages, it's just if you take mammals, for example, and just follow it back.
So this on the tree, on this gigantic tree of you're gonna learn this, so I'm gonna say it for the first time. On this tree of Sarcopterygian, this is mammal, and this right here, this horizontal line is the mammal lineage. And then what's this one? Okay, so it's the lineage that contains the ancestor of mammals, but also the lineage that contains the ancestor of all these guys, which have their own special name that you guys definitely already know. Because they're reptiles. But the point I want you to make is like, it's kind of this hard thing to think about like this. is the tetrapod lineage. Because this right here is called tetrapoda, and everything after this has 4 legs. This is the tetrapod lineage, but the mammal lineage is contained within that Nickelback barn. Does that make sense? There's one population here. There's one population here. There's one population here. Mammals have an ancestor that runs through all of them, but as you go back farther and farther, it's joining up with many other different things. So this thing is not furry, right? The fur happens later. Okay, so that's like lineage. So it's like the line on the tree. I'm going to be drawing phylogenies that are a little bit like loopy. Mine are always curvy because all that really matters is the branching between the different lineages. That's all that matters. You guys might see this a lot, these diagonal lines making the phylogeny. It's the same information, right? When the trout and the cow and the coelacanth last week was all diagonal. These type of phylogenies where there's like right angles, this isn't different. What is amazing is that people who do biology education have done like pretty rigorous research, and like high school students and undergraduate college students learn phylogenies easier when you have it be boxy, which I just think is amazing. And I'll do this sometimes, but I'll also do that sometimes. And you guys will see soon enough, most of my phylogenies look like this because I'm trying to fit it all on a slide. But all that matters, of course, is the branching. You can diagram it a bunch of different ways. Okay, those are the lineages. All right, what's a clade?
Organisms with their common ancestor.
Okay, so what's an example on your tree? That's what
Like
I-
snakes and lizards and the top, I don't know.
The tuatara. The tuatara, so they're a clade. So they have a common ancestor right here. And there's a whole bunch of words we can talk about now. So what do we call this thing on the tree? So that's a node. The node designates a common ancestor between these things, this and this one. What do we call these things together? Yeah, they're sisters. Any sister groups share a node. That node represents the common ancestor. The common ancestor and all the descendants makes a clade. Wow. You see how these things all mean really similar things, and it's just trying to make sure we get it all straight. So those are all labeled there on the board. Great, great, great. There's a node. Frogs and salamanders are sisters. Absolutely. Birds and crocodiles are sisters. Absolutely. That's crazy. Looking at this, or looking at your worksheet, or looking at that tree of your favorite stuff that I just threw up there, totally for fun now. Any relationships or things that you're like, I don't know about that, or I want to know more about that.
Alligators and penguins.
Alligators representing crocodiles, penguin being the only bird anybody wrote on their favorite animals. So this is birds and crocs are each other's closest relatives. This node right here has a name. You guys will learn it. The only other reptiles people said, besides another kind of gator, was a turtle. So here's your node that represents all reptiles. And so of the animals that were possibly, or organisms that were even possible to put on this tree, penguin and the gator go together. That's funny, right? That's great. I could have done it with like just a flower and just a mushroom and just an alligator. We go alligator, mushroom, and then flower. You guys would be like, oh, but it's real. It's true. Okay. So that is clade and node and sister group. All right, those are the words I want to make sure we get. I want to hear about monophyletic groups now. What is a monophyletic group? This is an important thing. I like that you guys have circled on both of these dry erase boards, so I'm not really worried about it. But can somebody put it into words? What makes a monophyletic group or a monophyletic taxon? A taxon is for sure something that is usually the clade. It's a monophyletic clade. It's a taxon. So how do you define a monophyletic group?
Monophyletic group is any clade that includes all of the ancestors,
All of the ancestors would go all the way
or
like
sorry, all of the descendants
of
of any node on that clade.
any node which represents a common ancestor. So the simplest definition I want you guys to burn into your brains for a monophyletic group is B right here. It's a common ancestor in every single thing that comes after that common ancestor. So on this phylogeny here of A, B, C, D, E, the common ancestor of B, C, D, and E is down there. If you are including that in your definition, that right there in that red circle, whatever that thing really is, we would call that a monophyletic group. So here's these two organisms here. They both have their own lineage. They have a common ancestor. If you have a clade whose name means everything, this common ancestor and all of its descendants, so this and this, that is a clade, a great taxon. I bet you guys know what this clade is called. On this tree, what clade is that? Plants. A+, no worries. You could get really specific and tell me the actual subordinal level of things that is between specifically a nightshade and a corpse flower, because somebody liked nightshade, somebody liked corpse flower. But you could also say, on this tree, that's just plants, and I'd be like, yeah, that is just. Okay, so that's a monophyletic group, a common ancestor and all of its descendants. I don't know why that's happening. The only reason we talk about this is because very often in biology, there are good reasons that people have named kind of groups of organisms that are paraphyletic. And so I won't have you guys define this really, but you can see on this example here, if you had that common ancestor, but not everything that descends from it, and you called that a thing, that's a paraphyletic group. It's not great for evolution because it not great for evolutionary studies, but it might have like functional utility. A great example that we already talked about in this class is reptiles. So you guys might think the turtle and the alligator should go together for totally great reasons. They're scaly, they're ectothermic, they're in the tropics. That's fine. So if you were to circle the turtle and the alligator, but not the penguin, because the penguin is feathered and warm-blooded and all these other things. You're saying the alligator and the turtle go together in some ways, but that doesn't reflect their evolutionary relationships. So you can say that they're reptiles, lowercase r. That's a paraphyletic group. Biologists are not we're gonna pull away from that because we care more about relationships and what that shows us. If we put reptiles as turtles and alligators and lizards, but not birds, we are robbing ourselves of understanding something about the real biology of these organisms. Alligators have a ton more in common with penguins than you might expect. So we would have to talk about that. So that's just something I want you to know. The simple thing is a monophyletic group, common ancestor, all descendants. Paraphyletic group is a common ancestor, but not everybody. Does that make sense? Okay. All of the phylogenies you're ever going to see, even if I just whip one out, like I just threw this one up here, are going to be based on evidence. That evidence could be genomic, it could be all kinds of things. In this class, we're going to be focused a lot on comparative morphology, anatomy. And so anything that is used to inform a scientist to make a phylogeny can be called a character. It's like a feature, it's a trait. A character is something like this. Now, you want it to be heritable, right? You want it to be something that evolution works with. It's how we can tell different things apart. So this was another thing on your worksheet. Can you talk in your bigger groups of 7, what would make a really good character? Something that is valuable for us to determine the relationships of organisms. What features might define a good character?
It has just like this.
Associated across populations.
Yeah.
There's something specific that we should say that we looked at like the kernel.
This is like automatic.
A lot of
All right, can I get some volunteers, which group from the groups, just to give us a couple ideas what makes a good character? Yeah, Kevin.
Distinctive.
Distinctive.
Yeah, like not hard necessarily the phrase a lot with hearts, but like.
Do you think there's a place on the tree of life where like heart, no heart is a good character? At some point, hearts have to evolve, right? Because not every single living thing has a heart. And so somewhere in the tree of life, heart is maybe a good character. But after that, if you're comparing all the monkeys in the Amazon, you're like, heart, guess what? They all have a heart. Not that helpful. But it's something you could detect. What else? What other things can make a good character?
We just had a couple of additional terms.
Yeah, go ahead.
We said like it needs to be observable,
Uh-huh.
it needs to be consistent across the population.
Okay.
Measurable.
It's okay, measurable, consistent population, like that. I think this is a great one. So this is an example of like, I like everything I just heard, by the way. Variable among taxa means something like, when you are making a phylogeny, I hope you have some focus in mind. You're not doing all of life on Earth all at once. And so if you're doing South American monkeys, variable among taxa, heart wouldn't be a good one, but something else might be a good one. So you want to be cognizant of what you're trying to get at and how it's variable amongst your study organisms. That's a really good thing. This is a big one, and I heard you guys kind of talking about this before I asked you. Genetically determined, something that's like heritable, right? So there's tons of examples in the natural world where like, if you're a plant in the desert versus a plant in the rainforest, the exact same species, but you might have smaller leaves or grow shorter. That's an environmental plastic response to habitat. That's not something that's genetically determined, and it might give you false results. You put this plant that's the same species, but some of them are in the rainforest and some of them are in the desert. They don't look like each other. So genetically determined is a good one. Oops. There is another thing, isn't there? All right. Well, I don't know what's going on with my slides. They're like automatically advancing, and there is a number 3. So I'll figure that out. I wanted to ask if you guys could throw any characters up here. Some people already have, because they're being fantasy. So indeed, yes, chloroplast is a great character. And if I were to put a mark on this tree to say where chloroplasts evolved, well, this thing has chloroplasts, this thing has chloroplasts. I could say that they each independently evolved chloroplasts, or I could say that they evolved them, they got a common ancestor, had them, they both inherited them. Any other characters you guys would throw up on the tree you'd be comfortable with? Yes.
Berries, coconut fiber.
Oh, look at this. Mitochondria. This is a great example of an evolutionary hypothesis we could test. Did that mushroom and that nightshade and that cheetah all inherit mitochondria from their common ancestor? Or did they each independently evolve it, or maybe 2 of them just evolved it? We could test that. That's a great idea. What's another character we could put up here?
They like skull shape,
Okay, where? What do you mean?
like synapses versus synapses.
Oh, can you say more what that means?
I don't know if there's anything. Yeah, turtles.
Yeah, so he's talking about the muscles in the temporal region of the skull. So mammals only have 1 hole. You guys have 1 hole. We'll talk about it later. And all reptiles ancestrally, it's kind of a mess, but have 2. And so there's a split here. 2 holes. 1 hole in the skull for jaw muscles. Doesn't it make you, and I hope the answer is yes, doesn't it make you go a little bit bananas to be like, well, wait a minute. What's the deal? Anyway, that's way too zoomed in on like what my lab actually does. What's another thing? What's another thing? I mean, some of these are up here, right? Fur, milk. Do we agree with fur and milk going here? Okay, so what's this? Could be mammals. I'm gonna say placental mammals, but there's no kangaroos on here. Yeah, that's great. So I just hope you guys can see we can like make this go crazy. So this is like dogs, bears. You don't know what this is, but I'm gonna write it. Caniforms, carnivores. We can go back and back and back and back. Oh, this is a great one. Laurasia ears. All of these things have names. And so we can go, you know this one, I bet. Thank you very much. They're actually, these things like almost are really sisters to each other, like even in the cats. So I can give you a really specific name if I want. Anyway, just an example there. We're going to talk about character states and how they help us understand evolution. What's important about them is that a character is like a statement. So fur is on here, but the character would be like presence of fur, presence of hair. And then the character state would have, when we scored, when we looked at all the organisms we cared about and measured the thing we're talking about, we would score them, and some of them would be scored as ancestral or primitive. We're making another hypothesis here, and some of them will be scored as derived, the advanced character. These words are outdated, a little bit unpleasant to say. It makes evolution seem very linear. It's not. So these are the words we'll be using, ancestral and derived. And so we might say, I bet mammals have fur. Mammals only have fur. So when I take all these amniotes, I think that the ancestral condition is no fur, and the derived condition is fur. And so because it's a derived thing, mammals can be defined by the presence of fur. That makes sense? It's all kind of fluffy and philosophical. And so what's important here is that all of these terms, ancestral and derived, are relative. Calvin's example of a heart, way early back in animal evolution, a heart is a derived characteristic and other animals don't have it. But once you get up into monkeys, all those monkeys ancestrally have a heart, and it's not interesting to talk about the presence of a heart. There might be details in the heart that are interesting. So these are relative terms. We're going to have a lot of sliding around. And then there's polarity, because it helps us understand evolutionary transformations. So what is ancestral and what is derived, and when that change happened. Did fur happen here from a no fur to a fur lineage? Or did it happen here? And then these guys just inherited their fur, and then these ones lost their fur? I don't know, but we can test those kind of ideas. Okay, enough of me blabbing. Here's 2 Idaho animals. If you don't know them, it's a trout and a mountain lion. These are very observable. They're probably familiar to you. Some of you probably can see what's inside of them because you know something about cats or you know something about fish. It's okay if you don't. But we're going to use these two Idaho animals to make a big, I hope, list of characters. And I want you guys to make hypotheses about the characters you're observing. What of the characters you're observing are unique to the mountain lion, are unique to the trout? What are shared by them because their common ancestors shared them? What are shared by them, but they did it on their own? They each evolved it, and they just happen to share it now. So these are very different things. I'll write this on the board. Go ahead and chat with each other for a while here. You can be in your groups of, I think your groups of 7 is more fun for this. Come up with a big list of characters that are unique to the mountain lion, unique to the trout, shared via their, I'm gonna say CA, which is their common ancestor, which means the common ancestor of trout and mountain lions had this, and they both have inherited from that common ancestor. And versus shared, and put that in quotes, but each evolved the trait independently. If this is all seeming a little bit wacky, that's okay. We'll get some examples going and then I think you'll get it.
The shared trait is the same trait.
It's whatever, I'm not gonna get too specific, it's something you can observe about them. When I've tried to specify, people have been like, they're both brown, great. Where do you put brown on here? Which of those 4 categories? Okay, or they will have brown. So go ahead and take a little minute here, talk about it. What features do you think, anatomical, keep it anatomical. You can both be like, Idaho, but don't do that. Keep it about their body plans. Okay, so unique to the mountain lion, unique to the trout, paired with both because they're common ancestor, shared because they both have it, but you think it probably evolved independently. And again, every single one of these is a hypothesis you guys are making. I'm not like holding you to these. These are what you think is likely the case for the fact that you can see that they both like. All right, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
See a gold medal.
But for you can.
I mean, guilt or. Guilt or. Something.
Sure. Or on different pictures. There's something like mountain lion had a small.
And you have to.
I mean, we can just put sensory. They both have sensory or.
It's also about how to list it for the whole thing.
Technically, mountain lions have. Ancestor. I guess.
I guess it's not so letter or whatever. Shoulders. Like.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I like it. They're different.
Shared characteristic. Both of that.
All right, I'm just because I'm looking at the time, I'm gonna call you guys back. This is just an exercise and observation. I was hearing some cool things. I liked when I heard a little bit of a disagreement between you guys. That's great. Forcing you maybe to be more specific. So, can I get some examples of observable characters that you would argue are unique to the mountain? You're just comparing these two, yeah.
Like we said, like fur, claws, bones in their limbs.
Ooh, fur, claws. Say it again.
Bones in their limbs.
Bones in their limbs. I'm gonna stick a pin in that one because does the fish have limbs? So fun. We're gonna come back to this. Absolutely. These are arms and legs, but in a fish, they never became arms and legs, so it's so wrong and inappropriate for me to call them arms and legs. But there's bones in those things, so I'm not gonna write that one down. What are some other mountain lion ones?
Whiskers.
Whiskers, which is just fancy fur. Shoulders. What do we mean by shoulders? Like the whole stuff for your arm. It's loose, right? You guys know something? And this is what's so fun and why I shouldn't do this, because I get distracted on every single one. There's one bone here in this thing, in this fish's gill arch, there's one bone that is homologous, it's the same as your scapula. So there is a shoulder up in there, but it never ever became a shoulder. It's not upsetting, but I like it, I know what you mean. Because the functionality is very different. Okay, what are some features unique to the trout? Ooh, lays eggs.
Gills.
Gills.
Fins.
Fins. No mountain lion with fins. What else?
Scales.
Scales.
Lateral.
The lateral line. Awesome. I just want to say that these features are really excellent for determining how the trout is different from the mountain lion. Once we get more into this, some of these are, oh boy. All right. What traits do you think they both share? Because the common ancestor of all fish and all mammals, bony fishes and all mammals share that feature. Vertebrae, the presence of a backbone.
Yeah, teeth.
Teeth. What else? A jaw.
Eyes.
Eyes. So does everybody understand that what we're saying here is the common ancestor of mammals and bony fishes had an eyeball, and now they both have an eyeball today, and that eyeball, you can go through the lineages. That's really fun and really cool. And you might think maybe something else happened, and then everyone's gonna be like, what's the evidence for that? And get excited. So these eyes are homologous to each other, maybe. We're gonna talk about that word in a second. Vertebrae, teeth, jaws, eyes. Okay. Any features you guys have that you think they share, but they both did it on their own, like it's not from their common ancestor?
The fact that they're both carnivores.
Oh my goodness, diet. So I'm gonna put a question mark by that one. They are both carnivores. Although I found like seeds and stuff inside the trout. But anyway, what'd you say?
Tails.
A tail. Oh my goodness sakes. Is a tail a good example here? Interesting. What do you mean by a tail? Actually, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna say that. What other things might they both have in common?
Camouflage.
Oh.
Camouflage.
They both are camouflaged in their environment, maybe? If you thought that they both inherited environment-specific camouflage from their common ancestor, you might think that, but then what you're saying is that every single thing since the diversion between bony fish and mountain lions has had camouflage to its environment. That seems a little bit intense to me. So yeah, I bet you, if I had to bet money, that their relative camouflage, they both independently evolved, probably pretty recently when they are starting to live and we were having that same little. Also, I don't know how great camouflage, mountain lions are sometimes really good at camouflage, and mostly they're really good at being very still and intense. Because there's mountain lions in the rainforest and there's mountain lions in the desert, they're both the same kind of color. So it's mostly just sneaky cat tactics. Okay, the point of this was to have you guys make some observations. I hope some of this is like clicking, like, okay, there's things we can observe here. All of those are characters, all of those are observable. And they're gonna help us build a bunch of our words out. So I used this word earlier. Homology is when there's a similarity in characters that's due to common ancestry. So I will bet you everything I have that the vertebrate teeth, eyes, jaws, and the, this is very broad now because they're so different, but the very presence of a tail, all of those things between those two organisms are absolutely homologous. Your eyes, your teeth, your jaws are also homologous with that trout, just like with the mountain lion. So there are a lot of different ways people use homology. So I put them up here. So like an ostrich and a hummingbird both have wings that are homologous to each other. The hummingbird flaps it 1,000,000 times a second. Ostrich does not fly. They're still homologous. But in a broad sense, we can talk about homology too. So bats have a humerus and a radius and ulna, and birds have a humerus and a radius and ulna. Those bones are homologous, but the wings of bats and birds are not homologous. One's made out of feathers, one's made out of skin. But the bones are indeed homologous. Something that's really important to this class that we're going to talk about a lot is homoplasy. So homo means the same, right? But homoplasy, similar, but nothing to do with their ancestry. They didn't inherit that similarity from their common ancestor. They're the same, but not because of evolution. In a very broad, stupid kind of sense, this is something from like an intro textbook, a butterfly or a fly and a bird both have wings. Those wings are homoplastic. But yes, check, they have wings. Those wings are not from the common ancestor of birds and flies. They've independently evolved them. I think I'm going to skip that. We'll talk about that in a second. I'd rather spend the last little bit of our class talking about this. One really specific kind of homoplasy that I love and that comparative anatomy excels at teaching you guys about is this thing called convergence. I know you all probably have heard of convergent evolution. So convergent evolution is a kind of homoplasy. Similar characters in phylogenetically, so on the tree, distantly related, or even, whatever it means to be unrelated things. I love this so much. This is a shark. This is a mammal. That is a bony fish. This is an extinct thing, but it's a kind of reptile. That's all I'm going to say. A reptile, a shark, a bony fish, and a mammal. Here's a picture of all of them. Please talk to each other, make observations about these 4 completely different kinds of animals. Go ahead. Yeah. Oh boy. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. I don't know.
That's one of those questions.
Yeah.
Can I have some people just share out some observations they're making? Yes, Ronnie.
I know there's a specific name for that fact.
Wow. Can anybody know what counter shading is? So you dark on top, light on the bottom. It is a pattern you see again and again and again out in the oceans. What is it? We'll talk about it later. But that is interesting, isn't it? Okay, what else? Really streamlined body. Does anybody have any prior knowledge, like what the ecology of these organisms are? I'm hearing marine, so that means the oceans. People usually say aquatic when they mean like rivers and lakes, and marine when they mean the ocean. So these are all marine organisms, they live in the ocean. Where do they live in the ocean? I picked these pictures on purpose. Big open water, yeah. What do they do out there? They're predators, and they're specifically predators of small, fast things. None of these guys are chasing baby whales, like some sharks might be. This one is a fast eating fish, eating squid, eating fish, eating squid. So they're open ocean pursuit predators. One's a mammal, one's a reptile, one's a bony fish, one's a cartilaginous fish. Okay, so you said streamlined body shape. So maybe their niche space, the fact that that's what they do functionally, the fact that that's where they get their food, evolution has pushed them all to be torpedoes, basically, which is crazy. What else? What other things? Dorsal fins. Tell me, talk to your neighbors, tell me about homology or not of all these dorsal fins, what you think might be true. Go ahead and chat. Dorsal fin's the one on top. Realize I didn't say this one. This is the one you see before the shark gets you. All right, who has any, you can pick two, you don't have to do the whole thing. Any hypotheses about potential homology of you can start with observation. You're sitting there, you're Aristotle, you're looking at the beach. Everybody's got a dorsal fin in front of me right now. Homology of the dorsal fin. Are they all homologous? They all inherit the same dorsal fin from common ancestor of all of them? If not, what else might you think is going on?
Well, sharks and the marlin would have homologous because they never really lost them, they just kind of changed, but the dolphins and the ichthyosaurs at some point lost that every form.
If you follow the dolphin lineage back not that far, you're basically going to be looking at like a little shrew thing. That's weird, but that's something we know. If you follow the ichthyosaur lineage back a little while, it's going to look like a little lizard thing. These things have lineages that have never left the ocean. So the loss of a dorsal fin does characterize land animals like reptiles and mammals, and then both dolphins and ichthyosaurs have independently evolved another kind of thing, a dorsal fin. What is so crazy is there's obviously a reason for this. Some of you were talking about it. What is the dorsal fin doing on all these animals? Yeah, you're moving. And it's like you're a triangle. If you look at it from the front, they got these two fins and then the one on top. You can go through the water really quickly. It is absurd that a mammal and a reptile would have from selective pressure evolved dorsal fins and then look like this thing whose lineage has never, ever, ever left the ocean. That's remarkable. And it's why convergent evolution is so cool. Similar environmental pressures resulting in similar shapes among distantly related things. What other features? Dorsal fins, love it. What's the caudal fin? Which one is that one? The tail fin, yeah, what about it?
And the martin and then the shark.
Yeah.
But then for the dolphin, it grows into.
You can read people from 1,000 years ago, they talk about it. All the fishes go like this.
Yeah.
Except for whales, which are weird. They go like that.
Yeah.
How come? You guys know we're going to talk about it. It's great. But they're still caudal fin powered. They still get their thrust from the back of their tail. Do you know how weird this is? Do you guys know any other mammals who are powered by their vertebral column?
Beavers in the water.
Beavers, and what was that last part?
In the water.
Oh, interesting. Beavers, in the water. Yes, amazing. Otters, again, where? In the water. Okay, so how about their eyeballs? Homology statement about their eyeballs? Eyeballs. They're all vertebrates. They all have backbones. They've all got jaws. Love that. So there's tons of characters. We're going to talk about all kinds of characters in this class. I'm aware, oh gosh, what time it is. We'll stop here. Yep, I won't go on to the next part. But this is, I hope, giving you guys some stuff on Thursday. we're actually gonna get into like true content. Thursday, I'm really excited. We're talking about the origin of vertebrates and vertebrates on the tree of life in general. So actually getting into the meat, the specifics. And hopefully some of this tree thinking will help you guys as we go through that. All right, thank you.